Hi, I'm Simon Phillips, and you are watching infomusic.pl and infodrum.pl. Well, first of all, first question is why Tama? Back in 1978, I was in Japan playing with Jeff Beck and Stanley Clarke, and my drum kit was my own drum kit, which I had bought, which I'd been using for that particular kit, 75, 76, 77, 3 years, and it was a Ludwig Octoplus. Now, I had a endorsement deal for about an hour, maybe 3 hours, with another company in England. I thought it might be nice, but then I tried the drums out on a gig, and I hated them, so I just gave them straight back. However, the Ludwig kit was single head, concert toms, and I wanted to have some double heads, but I also needed a manufacturer that made all the different sizes. And that was difficult then. Not everybody made a 10-inch drum, you know, 10-inch tom-tom. Not everybody made a 15-inch tom-tom. It was kind of pretty tricky at that time. While I was in Japan, the Ibanez and Tama people approached us, me and Stanley, in Nagoya, and I wasn't really turned on by Japanese drums at the time. I wanted Ludwig. I wanted American drums. However, they brought a drum kit to the gig, and when I saw it, it was a little bit different to what I had seen so far. The shells were beautiful. I was like, wow, I haven't seen this stuff, you know? So obviously the drums I'd seen were a little bit older. This was their later stuff, and I went, wow. And I thought about this, and at that time, drummers were still competing with volume. We didn't really, I mean, we had monitors, but it was still an issue of trying to cut through, you know, the guitar with 4x12s and stuff. So I asked them about can you make a fiberglass kit? And they said, yeah, we actually make a series of drums called Fiberstar, and they're all made out of fiberglass. I went, really? Okay. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, if you can make I wrote it out, if you can make these sizes, then I'll give it a go. And that was at the end of 1978, and about March 1979, there was a knock on my door in my little house at the time, and somebody delivered boxes and boxes. I couldn't actually get out the front door. I had to go around the kitchen, out the back, through the fence to get to the boxes. I mean, it was ridiculous, you know. And that was the first Tama kit I used, and I loved it. And here I am, 30, what was that? That was 79, so, you know, 38 years later, still playing Tama. Obviously, I get the sound. No matter what drum kit I used, it's still going to sound like me. But the drum kit has to work for you the best way it can. And whenever I have used other drum kits, it's not that they've been bad or anything, but what I've noticed is that the sound of the tom-toms has not been what I'm used to. I'm used to a lot of cojones with the toms. And I find that a lot of manufacturers, the kick drums are great, the snares sound great, but the toms just sound weaker. So that's one thing that Tama does supply me. I can tune their drums, and it sounds how I want it to sound. So I'd say that's the, you know, otherwise, it's always the musician that's going to make their drums sound the way they want. Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to geography. In London or in England, studios didn't have their own drum kits. And if they did, they would be in really poor condition. So it was the normal thing to do was to bring your own drum kit to the session. In the US, however, most studios had drum kits. So especially in New York City, you would typically have your cymbals, maybe a snare drum, and a pedal. And you'd use their drums. My first session in New York City was in 1974. I had all my drums delivered, and the studio were insisting. They said, no, we have a kit here. I said, yeah, but it's not my kit, and it doesn't sound like my kit. And they said, well, we're all ready to go with this. And I was like, okay. And I was only 17 at the time. And I had a look, and it was a Slingerland kit. They said, you can use the snare drum. And I said, oh, thank you. But I noticed them tuning the drums, and they were tuning the tom-toms with a Conn strobe tuner. And I thought, wow, now I've never seen that before. And they were checking the top head and the bottom head. They were really doing a careful job of it. And I went, okay, all right, I'll use them. And it was actually very good. They really had taken care. It was at the Hip Factory. So I thought, that just shows you that the instruments that most New York studios had were actually pretty good. So you didn't need to cart your own kit around, which in New York City is kind of tough. I mean, literally, you would have to put it in a cab and then up flights of stairs or up an elevator. It's a little bit different to London. London, you had to carry them around. So you also had to make do with equipment that maybe wasn't the best. We couldn't afford, I certainly couldn't afford a Ludwig kit. So I was using a Premier or a Hayman kit, and I was trying to make it sound good. So we got a lot more experience of tuning the drum kit and making sure that there's no rattles and squeaks for recording. So you get used to stripping down your kit and, making sure it's all clean, tidy, putting it back together. It's just something that we did. So, and it's something I enjoyed doing anyway. I just continued to do that, and that was always my way of doing it. And it's always stuck with me. Well, first of all, make sure everything works properly and there's no rattles and squeaks and buzzes. I mean, that's really important. Secondly, you need to make sure that the drum kit is balanced. And when I say balanced, that the cymbals are not louder than the drums, that the toms are open enough to be able to hear them properly. Because if you can put one microphone over the drum kit, literally one microphone, and it sounds okay, it's going to sound great with all the other, with all the close miking. I really believe that. And it's very important to make your equipment what I call microphone friendly. So it records well. But the reality of that means a lot of experience. It means a lot of studio experience to get to that stage. So it's a tough one. I mean, you just have to learn as you go through. But certainly bear those little pointers in mind. Good balance between the kick, snare, toms, and cymbals, and get rid of all the squeaks and buzzes, and unwanted excessive ring. Ring is okay if it works, but excessive ring, no, and excessive buzzing of the snares, no. But you also have to remember that it is a musical instrument and it's not perfect. Okay? That's, But I do play by instinct. So I tend to not think too much about it and just go and play. And whatever happens will be my first pass at the tune. And whoever's producing or the artist may go, okay, that was pretty cool, but I was actually thinking of it more maybe this way. Oh, okay, yeah, all right, we can try that. And then you go and try that, and they might go, yeah, that's better, I prefer that. Or they might go, you know what, I actually preferred the first way you did it. It just depends. There's so many variables. In terms of soloing, I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, it's like tonight, I won't know what I'm going to do until I start doing it. And I'll just kind of hit a few drums and see what happens and go from there. I get inspired by the sound. So depending how the drum kit's reacting and the kind of sound I'm getting will steer me into a direction stylistically of where I'm going to go. So, I don't practice very much. I'm a very bad practicer. doing drum clinics, playing drum workshops is the best way to practice because it's all drums, you know? And that's when I start thinking more about drummy kind of things. But the reality is I don't get a chance to practice that much. Most of us don't, actually. Most of, you know, we're watching Eric Clapton right now, and that Gadd is playing drums there. I mean, you know, very rarely do we get a chance to practice. But we do get to warm up in the dressing room. I like to warm up a little bit. I know Gadd likes to warm up. Chambers doesn't, apparently. He just goes out and plays. But he's ridiculously good anyway, so he doesn't need to. It all depends what you're comfortable doing, you know. I love to have time to sit down with the kit and try some things out. And the kind of stuff I do is more like coordination stuff, like rhythms with awkward patterns, awkward sticking, feet and hands. That's the stuff I like to work on because it's a really great feeling when you actually achieve something, but it's very hard to get there. It's quite tricky. And I'm going to be dealing a little bit with that stuff tonight. I'm going to demonstrate some stuff, which maybe I can only barely do anyway, so I'll probably make a mess of it anyway. So, but that also is my concept with practice. Always practice things you can't do. If you had asked me that question 30 years ago, I'd probably say, yeah, whatever I can do with my hands, I want to do with my feet. And I try to do rudiments that I can do with my hands, with my feet. But now I'm not so concerned about it because the hands are able to do totally different things than the feet will ever be able to do. The other thing is, back then, we didn't have, most of us, as far as I know, didn't have a concept of playing like double strokes with our feet. We always thought it was all single. And the first drummer I saw that was practicing double strokes on his feet was Virgil Donati. And he was a kid in Australia. And I was in Melbourne. I happened to, the guy, Frank Corniola, took me to the drum studio there. And Virgil was practicing. And I went, really? Are you kidding me? Wow. We never even thought about that because we didn't think it was possible. So, you know, playing has evolved and changed. And people, you know, like Thomas Lang, thank you. I just couldn't think of his last name. I mean, his stuff is ridiculous he does with his feet, you know. So, you know, things have changed. Time has changed and we're doing different things. So I guess also it does the type of music. I don't do so much stuff with my kick drums than I used to. I'm more into creating the overall music. So I'd say a pair of sticks and a practice pad would be more important than a pad and a pedal, yeah. Well, I think what's happened is I've become a lot more relaxed playing. I think the motion is a lot more, what's the word? Concise. It's not really quite the word I'm looking for. There's less stuff. It's much more relaxed and easy, I think. I don't play as hard, I don't play as loud. I don't know, I think it's just, it definitely has evolved. I think my touch on the drums and on the cymbals has really developed in the last 10 years. And it also might be to playing a lot more jazz, a little bit more straight ahead, playing quieter, in a quieter atmosphere, like with the Hiromi trio. That's 6 years of playing with an acoustic piano. And at first it was kind of tough because I'm so used to hearing a guitar and keyboards filling up the sound. It's so transient. And no matter what, I always sound too loud to me. So that has been a real learning curve, and I think that's helped certainly the way that I approach and tonally with the drums and touch. I think that's what's changed a lot. But hey, I still hope I'm learning something and evolving, of course. Would love to, yeah. There's still so much, there's still so much. I mean, it's funny when I'm playing a solo and I'm just kind of doing that and I'll try something and I'll go, oh, wow, I really should try to remember that and practice that because that's actually kind of cool, but I can't really do it very well at the moment, I don't know. I mean, just coming up, having a vast vocabulary of stuff, I think is something that I think, when I listen to Herbie Hancock play, it's amazing, his vocabulary. I mean, he never repeats himself. It's just incredible, and that's how I like to play. I try not to, I get bored of playing the same thing. Especially as a soloist, I get really bored of just playing the same. So I always try to do something different. And which you can do for the first 4 or 5 or 6 shows, and then you start repeating yourself because you're kind of running out of ideas. And that's what I try to work on, is try to see things very differently. Just try to imagine something and try to approach it from a different place. Yeah. Well, I'd like to know too. Well, you really have to try to get the rest, as much rest as you can. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes you get caught up in the euphoria of a show, and after the show, it's nice to just come down and just maybe have some food, have a drink, and just kind of chat and meet the local people after that. But, the thing to remember is, for those people, it's their big night. When we play a city, and let's say we come to Warsaw, it's like a big event for the people that are coming. For us, it's every night. And you can get tired really quickly. So sometimes you just have to be prepared to say, I need to get an early night tonight, and you have to say, your apologies, I can't hang on a very early morning, blah, blah, that kind of stuff. You do have to do that. But, you also have to learn to relax too after the show, So it's a struggle. That's a difficult thing to get right, actually, even now. When I'm home, I run a studio, so that gets me very busy too. So I don't have time really for any hobbies at the moment. And that's something I need to work on and change a little bit. And a hobby that's maybe a little easier and not as expensive to do as motor racing. So, because that's what I used to do, but it's not exactly stress-free, So, yeah, it's an interesting thing to try to get right, that. And in fact, I'm actually in the process right now of changing quite a lot of things in my life. Because last year, I got sick again on tour, and I just said, you know what, I need to change the stress levels. So, and I'm doing a lot of that right now, just changing where I live, my studio scenario, all of that, which some of it has already happened, just for maybe a slightly different type of life. So it's very important, yeah. And especially now, I'm 60 years old, so it's kind of time now to have some changes, I think. I think very important as a drummer to listen to many different types of music, because the nature of the instrument means you don't have to learn about theory and harmony, counterpoint, composition. These are all things that as a guitar player, piano player, horn player, you have to learn. I mean, you've got to know what key you're playing in, you've got to learn your scales, and, As a drummer, we don't really have to do that because our drums are not like that. We can, and I think it's wonderful that some people do that. So what we have to do is gain knowledge of different types of music, which add a lot of different grooves to our arsenal. So if somebody says, yeah, this needs to be kind of like a Middle Eastern kind of groove, you know what that is, you know? If somebody says, yeah, I want this to be kind of like a waltz, really, but it's kind of a rock and roll waltz, you know, you see what I mean? Or this is more country. This is like more of a country feel. You're not just kind of locked into your heavy metal groove, you know? I think that's very important, is to be able to learn to play many types of music, many grooves, whether you like it or not. Still investigate it, try it out, look for it. And you'll be amazed how you can use those rhythms in your heavy metal playing, if you're a heavy metal drummer, you know? So that's what my advice is be open music.